Grendel came, hoping to kill anyone he could trap on this trip to High Heorot. He moved quickly through the cloudy night, up from his swampland, sliding silently toward that gold-shining hall. He had visited Hrothgar's home before, knew the way, but never before nor after that night found Heorot defended so firmly, his reception so harsh. He journeyed, forever joyless, straight to the door, then snapped it open, tore its iron fasteners with a touch, and rushed angrily over the threshold. He strode quickly across the inlaid floor, snarling and fierce. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, burned with a gruesome light. Then he stopped, seeing the hall crowded with sleeping warriors, stuffed with rows of young soldiers resting together. And his heart laughed. He relished the sight, intended to tear the life from those bodies by morning. The monster's mind was hot with the thought of food and the feasting his belly would soon know. But fate that night intended Grendel to gnaw the broken bones of his last human supper. Human eyes were watching his evil steps, waiting to see his swift, hard claws. Grendel, who snatched at the first geat he came to, ripped him apart, cut his body to bits with powerful jaws, drank the blood from his veins, and bolted him down, hands and feet. Death and Grendel's great teeth came together, snapping life shut. Then he stepped to another still body, clutched at Beowulf with his claws, grasped at a strong-hearted, wakeful sleeper, and was instantly seized himself, claws bent back as Beowulf leaned up on one arm. That shepherd of evil, guardian of crime, knew at once that nowhere on earth had he met a man whose hands were harder. His mind was flooded with fear, but nothing could take his talons and himself from that tight, hard grip. Grendel's one thought was to run from Beowulf, flee back to his marsh and hide there. This was a different Heorot than the hall he had emptied. But Hygelac's follower remembered his final boast, and standing erect stopped the monster's flight, fastened those claws in his fists till they cracked, clutched Grendel closer. The infamous killer fought for his freedom, wanting no flesh but retreat, desiring nothing but escape. His claws had been caught. He was trapped. That trip to Heorot was a miserable journey for the writhing monster. The high hall rang, its roof boards swayed, and Danes shook with terror. Down the aisles the battle swept, angry and wild. Heorot trembled, wonderfully built to withstand the blows, the struggling, great bodies back beating at its beautiful walls, shaped and fastened with iron, inside and out, artfully worked. The building stood firm, its benches rattled, fell to the floor, gold-covered boards grating as Grendel and Beowulf battled across them. Hrothgar's wise men had fashioned Heorot to stand forever. Only fire they had planned could shatter what such skill had put together, swallow in hot flames such splendor of ivory and iron and wood. Suddenly the sounds changed. The Danes started in new terror, cowering in their beds as the terrible screams of the Almighty's enemies sang out in the darkness, the horrible shrieks of pain and defeat, the tears torn out of Grendel's taut throat, Hell's captive caught in the arms of him who of all the men on earth was the strongest. The mighty protector of men meant to hold the monster till its life leaped out, knowing the fiend was no use to anyone in Denmark. All of Beowulf's band had jumped from their beds, ancestral swords raised and ready, determined to protect their prince if they could. Their courage was great, but all wasted. They could hack at Grendel from every side, trying to open a path for his evil soul, but their points could not hurt him. The sharpest and hardest iron could not scratch at his skin, for that sin-stained demon had bewitched all men's weapons, laid spells that blunted every mortal man's blade. And yet his time had come, his days were over, his death sat near. Down to hell he would go, swept groaning and helpless to the waiting hands of still worse fiends. Now he discovered, once the afflictor of men, tormentor of those days, what it meant to feud with Almighty God. Grendel saw that his strength was deserting him, his claws bound fast, Hygelac's brave follower tearing at his hands. The monster's hatred rose higher, but his power had gone. He twisted in pain, and the bleeding sinews deep in his shoulders snapped. Muscle and bone split and broke. The battle was over. Beowulf had been granted new glory. Grendel escaped, but wounded as he was, could flee to his den, his miserable hole at the bottom of the marsh, only to die, to wait for the end of all his days. And after that bloody combat, the Danes laughed with delight. He who had come to them from across the sea, bold and strong-minded, had driven affliction off, purged Heorot clean. He was happy now with that night's fierce work. The Danes had been served as he boasted he'd serve them. Beowulf, a prince of the Geats, had killed Grendel, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering forced on Hrothgar's helpless people by a bloodthirsty fiend. No Dane doubted the victory, for the proof, hanging high from those rafters where Beowulf had hung it, was the monster's arm, claw, and shoulder, and all. And then in the morning, crowds surrounded Heorot, warriors coming to that hall from the faraway lands, princes and leaders of men hurrying to behold the monster's great staggering tracks. They gaped with no sense of sorrow, felt no regret for his suffering, went tracing his bloody footprints, his beaten and lonely flight to the edge of the lake, where he dragged his corpse-like way, doomed and already weary of his vanishing life. The water was bloody, steaming and boiling in horrible pounding waves, heat sucked from his magic veins, but the swirling surf had covered his death. Hidden deep in murky darkness, his miserable end, as hell opened to receive him. Then old and young rejoiced, turned back from that happy pilgrimage, mounted their hard-hoofed horses, high-spirited stallions, and rode them slowly toward Heorot again, retelling Beowulf's bravery as they jogged along. And over they swore that nowhere on earth, or under the spreading sky, or between the seas, neither south nor north, was there a warrior worthier to rule over them. But no one meant Beowulf's praise to belittle Hrothgar, their kind and gracious king. And sometimes when the path ran straight and clear, they would let their horses race, red and brown and pale yellow backs streaming down the road. And sometimes a proud old soldier who had heard songs of the ancient heroes and could sing them all through, story after story, would weave a net of words for Beowulf's victory, tying the knot of his verses smoothly, swiftly into place with a poet's quick skill, singing his new song aloud while he shaped it in the old songs as well.
Okay, all right, so wow, I mean, it can really move fast, action-packed, right, filled with the epic conventions mixed in there. So what happened overall? Let's retell it. Well, Grendel is night, and so well, they set him up, didn't they? Really? So they acted like they were asleep, right? Grendel breaks in, thinking, this is going to be easy. And
based on what it said, they were asleep, except for one guy.
He does get one of them, and then he grabs. What happens next? He grabs Beowulf, and
then he grabbed him.
absolutely, and then that's the first time he's ever felt pain and fear. He wanted to get away. He wanted to run away. It didn't go well for him.
Right. The idea of
absolutely is.
Because it was talking about how durable the walls were, so it's just really funny to think.
It is. And again, I wish I could show you I can't show you the clip, but anyway, because he doesn't wear clothes. He's Beowulf is nude. He's fighting Grendel. Grendel doesn't have any clothes either, so.
Grendel's a demon.
He doesn't wear clothes. But anyway, it's just very, very weird to see that. All right, guys, what else? Even if they would have used weapons, would it have mattered fighting Grendel?
No.
Why not? Yes, even. Right. It wouldn't be any good.
Which I don't know why
Grendel's a demon. He uses holy weapons. Like something from like. Physical
stick that does extra damage to the
Take it.
Whenever I see this, I always just want to say Odin.
So it might take a magic weapon to kill. All right. I think I was gonna, guys. Why does it's this question here? Why do you think Grendel attacks human beings? What causes him to attack humans?
Especially
also he wants to cause suffering because of how physical he is.
Good, very good.
Also, we're a lot easier to catch. Like,
Sure.
we don't really
Because
move
there's
from
nothing.
anything. We settle and we don't go anywhere. Everything else happens to move.
And we're pretty predictable. Humans are, we're not pretty predictable.
Pretty predictable? No, we are predictable.
We really are.
But also there's the only thing that pretty has their own pretty much free will. And that's what Grendel,
Reasonable thinking.
yeah, that's what Grendel actually wanted.
Reasonable thinking as well. It's just
You
different
look
for us
at
because we make decisions
North
based on our own wants.
College, if you look at North mythology, Grendel was an actual demon. And that's what he also fed on was free will of man.
That's good. Very good. All right. So why does, okay, going to Beowulf there, why does he offer help to a tribe other than his own in spite of the danger? I think we've really already answered this, but what is he, why? Is he,
He wants the glory.
sure. He wants the glory for
He
sure.
wants to be written in the books.
He does. He does.
They didn't have books yet, though, did they?
Okay. Wants to go down in history. He wants to go down. He wants the show to sing about him. All right. Grendel's mother. Okay. So now you think Grendel was bad. He has a mother, and she's not going to be happy. So let's see about that. Grendel's mother.
There's a world will be living.
All right. Grendel's mother. Oh, I got it on. Okay. Guys, are we ready? So you like the listening and not stopping. You're good? Okay, we're good to go. Battle with Grendel's mother. Here we go, guys.
Beowulf, parts 3 and 4. Grendel's mother and the battle with Grendel's mother. Although one monster has died, another still lives. From her lair in a cold and murky lake where she has been brooding over her loss, Grendel's mother emerges, bent on revenge. So she reached Heorot, where the Danes slept as though already dead. Her visit ended their good fortune, reversed the bright vein of their luck. No female, no matter how fierce, could have come with a man's strength, fought with the power and courage men fight with, smashing their shining swords, their bloody hammer-forged blades onto boar-headed helmets, slashing and stabbing with the sharpest of points. The soldiers raised their shields and drew those gleaming swords, swung them above the piled-up benches, leaving their mail shirts and their helmets where they'd lain when the terror took hold of them. To save her life, she moved still faster, took a single victim and fled from the hall, running to the moors, discovered, but her supper assured, she sheltered in her dripping claws. She'd taken Hrothgar's closest friend, the man he loved most of all men on earth. She'd killed a glorious soldier, cut a noble life short. No Geat could have stopped her. Beowulf and his band had been given better beds. Sleep had come to them in a different hall. Then all Heorot burst into shouts. She had carried off Grendel's claw. Sorrow had returned to Denmark. They'd traded deaths, Danes and monsters, and no one had won. Both had lost. Devastated by the loss of his friend, Hrothgar sends for Beowulf and recounts what Grendel's mother has done. Then Hrothgar describes the dark lake where Grendel's mother has dwelt with her son. They live in secret places, windy cliffs, wolf dens where water pours from the rocks, then runs underground, where mist streams like black clouds, and the groves of trees growing out over their lake are all covered with frozen spray, and wind down snake-like, roots that reach as far as the water and help keep it dark. At night, that lake burns like a torch. No one knows its bottom. No wisdom reaches such depths. A deer hunted through the woods by packs of hounds, a stag with great horns, though driven through the forest from faraway places, prefers to die on those shores, refuses to save its life in that water. It isn't far, nor is it a pleasant spot. When the wind stirs and storms, waves splash towards the sky, as dark as the air, as black as the rain that heavens weep. Our only help again lies with you. Grendel's mother is hidden in her terrible home, in a place you've not seen. Seek it if you dare. Save us once more, and again twisted gold, heaped up ancient treasure will reward you for the battle you win. Beowulf accepts Hrothgar's challenge, and the king and his men accompany the hero to the dreadful lair of Grendel's mother. Fearlessly, Beowulf prepares to battle the terrible creature. He leaped into the lake, would not wait for anyone's answer. The heaving water covered him over. For hours he sank through the waves. At last he saw the mud of the bottom, and all at once the greedy she-wolf who'd ruled those waters for 100 years discovered him, saw that a creature from above had come to explore the bottom of her wet world. She welcomed him in her claws, clutched at him savagely, but could not harm him, tried to work her fingers through the tight ring-woven mail on his breast, but tore and scratched in vain. Then she carried him, armor and sword and all, to her home. He struggled to free his weapon and failed. The fight brought other monsters swimming to see her catch, a host of sea beasts who beat at his mail shirt, stabbing with tusks and teeth as they followed along. Then he realized suddenly that she brought him to someone's battle hall, and there the water's heat could not hurt him, nor anything in the lake attack him through the building's high arching roof. A brilliant light burned all around him, the lake itself a fiery flame. Then he saw the mighty water witch, and swung his sword, his ring-marked blade, straight at her head. The iron sang its fierce song, sang Beowulf's strength, but her guest discovered that no sword could slice her evil skin, that runting could not hurt her, was useless now when he needed it. They wrestled. She ripped and tore and clawed at him, bit holes into his helmet, and that too failed him. For the first time in years of being worn to war, it would earn no glory. It was the last time anyone would wear it. But Beowulf longed only for fame, leaped back into battle. He tossed his sword aside, angry. The steel-edged blade lay where he dropped it. If weapons were useless, he'd use his hands, the strength in his fingers. So fame comes to the men who win it and care about nothing else. He raised his arms and seized her by the shoulder. Anger doubled his strength. He threw her to the floor. She fell. Grendel's fierce mother and the Geats' proud prince was ready to leap on her, but she rose at once and repaid him with her clutching claws, wildly tearing at him. He was weary, that best and strongest of soldiers. His feet stumbled, and in an instant she had him down, held helpless, squatting brown with dried blood and prepared to avenge her only son. But he was stretched on his back, and her stabbing blade was blunted by the woven mail shirt he wore on his chest. The hammered links held. The point could not touch him. He'd have traveled to the bottom of the earth at Githo's son and died there if that shining woven metal had not helped. And holy God, who sent him victory, gave judgment for truth and right, ruler of the heavens, once Beowulf was back on his feet and fighting. Then he saw hanging on the wall a heavy sword, hammered by giants, strong and blessed with their magic, the best of all weapons, but so massive that no ordinary man could lift its carved and decorated length. He drew it from its scabbard, broke the chain on its hilt, and then, savage now, angry and desperate, he lifted it high over his head and struck with all the strength he had left, caught her in the neck and cut it through, broke bones and all. Her bloody body fell to the floor lifeless. The sword was wet with her blood, and Beowulf rejoiced at the sight. The brilliant light shone suddenly, as though burning in that hall, and as bright as heaven's own candle lit the sky. He looked at her home, then following along the wall, went walking, his hands tight on the sword, his heart still angry. He was hunting another dead monster, and took his weapon with him for final revenge against Grendel's vicious attacks, his nighttime raids, over and over coming to Heorot when Hrothgar's men slept, killing them in their beds, eating some on the spot, 15 or more, and running to his loathsome moor with another such sickening meal waiting in his pouch. But Beowulf repaid him for those visits, found him lying dead in his corner, armless, exactly as that fierce fighter had sent him out from Heorot, then struck off his head with a single swift blow. The body jerked for the last time, then lay still. The wise old warriors who surrounded Hrothgar, like him staring into the monster's lake, saw the waves surging and blood spurting through. They spoke about Beowulf, all the graybeards, whispered together and said that hope was gone, that the hero had lost fame and his life at once, and would never return to the living. come back as triumph as he had left. Almost all agreed that Grendel's mighty mother, the she-wolf, had killed him. The sun slid over past noon, when further down, the Danes gave up, left the lake and went home, Hrothgar with them. The Geats stayed, sat sadly, watching, imagining they saw their lord, but not believing they would ever see him again. Then the sword melted, blood-soaked, dripping down like water, disappearing like ice when the world's eternal lord loosens invisible fetters and unwinds icicles and frost as only he can. He who rules time and seasons, he who is truly God. The monstrous hall was full of rich treasures, but all that Beowulf took was Grendel's head and the hilt of the giant's jeweled sword. The rest of that ring-marked blade had dissolved in Grendel's steaming blood, boiling even after his death. And then the battle's only survivor swam up and away from those silent corpses. The water was calm and clean, the whole huge lake peaceful once the demons who lived in it were dead. Then that noble protector of all seamen swam to land, rejoicing in the heavy burdens he was bringing with him. He and all his glorious band of Geats thanked God that their leader had come back unharmed. They left the lake together. The Geats carried Beowulf's helmet and his mail shirt. Behind them, the water slowly thickened as the monster's blood came seeping up. They walked quickly, happily across roads all of them remembered, left the lake and the cliffs alongside it, brave men staggering under the weight of Grendel's skull, too heavy for fewer than 4 of them to handle, 2 on each side of the spear jammed through it. Yet proud of their ugly load and determined that the Danes, seated in Heorot, should see it. Soon 14 Geats arrived at the hall, bold and warlike, and with Beowulf, their lord and leader, they walked on the mead hall green. Then the Geats' brave prince entered Heorot, covered with glory for the daring battles he had fought. He sought Hrothgar to salute him and show Grendel's head. He carried that terrible trophy by the hair, brought it straight to where the Danes sat, drinking, their queen among them. It was a weird and wonderful sight, and the warriors stared.
I bet they did stare. Oh my goodness, there's a couple of things that I know it's not humorous, but the ugly load and the terrible trophy, and the fact that they stared. It's like, and you know what a shish kebab is? I just think that he was carrying his head in the middle. It took how many guys? 4. Too many to carry that head, and Beowulf had to come up with the water with that, right? With that hilt of the giant sword. That was a lot. Wow.
He wasted that sword.
Wow. And he notice he left the treasure because, and they, you know, you let him have treasure, but he wanted this to show, look,
The priority.
cut Beowulf's head off, right? So this really, there's a lot of,
Grendel's head off.
cut Grendel's head off. Oh my gosh.
Beowulf
Cut his own head off, and he carried it. That's amazing. And I'm thinking of Sir Gawain.
Wow.
I'm thinking of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We'll read someone who does that later in a few weeks. But anyway, crazy. So why does he cut Grendel's head off? Like his character straight. Why does he cut his head off?
He's angry.
Yeah, he's angry. So he does it for
He has
Revenge?
no other reason, but he's bitter.
Sure.
His helmet's been destroyed. His sword's worthless. And
Absolutely.
he was almost killed.
Sure, but it's Grendel's head he goes for, not, and of course he kills her by her own, with her own sword, which is, it's funny, you know, interesting. So the only thing that protects him from her is the mail shirt. I have a piece of this with the word weird on it. Someone had picked this up at the fair years ago, but it's mail shirt, and I know we don't need to handle everything, but I've got it up here if y'all want to look at it, or, you know, here it
If
is.
it's woven properly,
You
it's
You
amazing.
can see. I mean, I would love to have a whole set of armor. That's really cool.
Could be.
And then I've got a picture of Grendel from this. This is the Ultimate Encyclopedia. It's someone's idea of Grendel. I don't know if the people can see. This is Grendel. It's supposed to be
It's
Grendel.
more like an ogre.
I know what he does look more like an ogre.
Did I draw it?
Well, you might fall. I forgot about your drawing. Yes. No, I haven't forgotten. Okay, so guys, looking, and I don't think we mentioned how he cut off Grendel's shoulder and put it high in the rafters. We didn't talk about that. Why would he do that?
He ripped it off.
He ripped it
As a
off.
trophy.
Yeah. So, but why would he do it? Why would he hang it in the rafters of the meat hall?
I don't know, so everyone can
So,
see.
You bet. He's haunted you guys for a long time. He's not gonna haunt you anymore.
And then she took it.
Yes.
She's
So
like,
it's very much the theme of revenge here.
Someone.
We get it first. Yes.
What was really funny is they put his shoulder toward the full shoulder, so people think he's still alive.
Oh.
But then they look again and they're like, oh,
Well, his shoulder's no longer there.
They're like,
He
oh,
only brought the
so-
head back.
Now, did y'all, I found it interesting that even the animals wouldn't, they'd rather die than drink from that warm, take water from that. That's how awful it was. And so it's going to get back to normal now that he's taken care of all the evil there.
It'd take a while.
It would, yes.
It said that the lake was getting thicker from the blood, but the blood boils. So when an animal drinks from the lake, wouldn't their blood start to boil?
They probably would let it like clean out first, but I just think it was, while they were still living there, they would not touch that more when they were living there. It was so nasty. I think that was the point, but you're right, it would, most definitely. Okay, guys, let's go, one more time, let's go to our journal. One more, last journal entry today. I want to respond for the revenge area. I want you to answer something about revenge here. So response 3 in your journal 3 for Beowulf is going to be, response number 3, discuss one example of revenge. Let's see, I want to say in Grendel, let's see, in the passages.
Grendel's mother and not the battle.
Well, both, any of them. About Grendel's mother and the battle, sorry. You can choose several different things there. And this is an interesting question, just kind of off the top. Who do you think is worse, Grendel or Grendel's mother? I mean, who was worse? I
Then
won't.
their behavior of Grendel was the worst.
Okay, Grendel's the worst because we can see, not saying we justify the mother's terrible actions, but what got her started up was her son.
Well, she
Why?
also gave no
Fighting.
thought before attacking. There was no plan in anything. She could only kill one person before having to flee. Grendel may have took what may be seen as a coward's way out, but killing more in the future than coming back is much more effective.
I see it more with fighting techniques and fighting styles, like who would have the edge, and like that's
Plus, fear is a much better factor than just showing.
Oh, sure, true. That's true. You're right. Fear is powerful. Hey guys, so we are responding here. I'm gonna check on my virtual people. No, she was not.
Not until she got to her own little area.
True.
So
You're
based
right.
on that alone,
That's a very good point. So virtual, we are responding to the journal for the last time today, please. On to the journal. Number 3. Today's reading. Yes, absolutely. Can I just take the virtual password?
Also, it never says that he carried a shield. I always carried a one-handed weapon. And no matter how good of a fighter were, you always carried a shield.
but
Like,
he cared to boast. Therefore, you what? You say that while others may be a great swordsman, they still need a shield, while I do not.
Right, he doesn't set himself apart. They're not blending.
well, the only other way that you will not have a shield is if you had another weapon on it. Like that's no matter how big and tough you are, unless you have a two-handed weapon or two one-handed weapon,
True, I know it, but I know
you have that shield.
we have to suspend our disbelief.
Plus,
What?
shields make it harder to use in certain areas. Plus, a shield is easier thing to grab rather than someone's arm. With his armor being as good as it was for most blades and claws, it probably would have been better to block with his arm rather than a shield that would have been easier to grab.
Yeah. Then wouldn't he just use a two-handed weapon and just the one-handed?
No, because in some areas you can't swing a two-handed great sword, but you can a short sword.
I feel like they're talking about Skyrim.
This is something like I'm enjoying it. I'm learning. I'm like, you taking notes.
All I hear is Skyrim though.
But I love it that you're talking about
It's
shield,
like a
because that's what
slower
came up in the last reading we did. I wish I could find a way to have my virtual more interactive. I just feel like it's,
Virtual.
I need to, well, I mean, I need
Yell
to.
randomly in the middle of class.
I need to.
Who's asking?
Yeah, really.
Just click class. Everything virtual.
Because this is, I mean, this is, I have 16 in virtual today. No. So we'll read Beowulf's last battle, the death of Beowulf.
Well, he died for the first time. Hey, killing 2 demons is not bad, even if you did have the help.
By the way, but you know that if you are over 7 foot, you are considered a giant.
No, I did not know that.
You are not considered a person anymore. You are considered a giant.
Yeah.
They literally put it on your driver's license. Giant. That too, but I just looked at, I'm like, oh, he's not a person anymore, he's a demon.
Special symbols and fire.
I'm getting the pull out over the road. Extra magic. It really was. What?
All you need is level 1. Well, actually, we do level 90 preparation.
That makes no sense. Why would they do that?
So, if you go to College of Winterfell and you talk to these first get up to 90, they'll give you a mission. You'll get your give it back to give it back to you when it's been ready. Go into the basement of Winterfell and there's a special ritual area where you get the right materials and any danger, any standard, and any danger garment. The problem is these random also say
I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. We're not going to read any more today. Just make sure that you have responded in your journal for the